Hello friends, so welcome to this lecture. In this demo, we'll discuss about two settings. We'll discuss about the firewall and virtual networks option in case of storage account, and we'll discuss about how we can secure our data transfer over a private link using the private endpoint. We have already discussed the theory about. So let's go to, I'll show you, let's go to storage account. I'll show you the options which will study in this particular demo. So quickly, if I'll open up a storage account, I have already created one storage account which we used in the last demo, SA test 389. So the options which we'll be discussing is firewall and virtual networks and private endpoint connections. We'll create a private endpoint so that other user services can connect to transfer the data over a private link. So if you remember, just to give you a quick overview, there are a number of options or a layered security approach we should use to secure our storage account. There is a role-based access, we have the access tokens, we have shared access keys, which we'll discuss or we'll have a demo in subsequent lectures. But we have discussed about all these options, how we can have encryption in transit. Similarly, there are another controls we can implement to secure our storage account. So the first option we have is firewall and virtual networks. So in firewall and virtual network, we'll discuss all these options which are here. But for the time being, we'll come to this firewall settings afterwards. But first, in order to create a private endpoint connection, we need to do certain configuration, which we can do it via here as well. But I want to show you that, okay, when you create your storage account, you get the option over there as well. So you can use this option as well. So you'll get similar options from here as well. But just to show you that, okay, how we can do that while creating a new storage account, let's do it quickly. So resource group will be the same, and storage account name I'll give SA test 489 because it should be unique, and East US the same location I'll be choosing. So when you click on networking, you'll get the option that, okay, whether you want to allow public endpoint, all networks, or how you want to connect to this particular storage account. If you want to provide selected networks only, you can do that, but we'll provide the private endpoint. So in that case, it will get a private IP from your virtual network only, which you have defined. So the location will be same, and make sure that, okay, that is having the same location which you are using where you are having your storage account. And the name I'll provide SA test because this is the name you are providing to an endpoint which you are creating. The earlier name we provided to a storage account. So just so that we don't get confused. So SA test 489 we created. So we'll provide the name private endpoint. Okay, the name, and this is the sub service which you need to provide access to. It could be blob, file, or table. So you can select blob, table, file, or a queue. So I'll select blob for this particular demo, and then this is the VNet which is already created, and then integrate it with the private endpoint. So you can note down this name for a future reference as well. And because let's say when you need to connect to your, let's say from your virtual machine, if you need to transfer some of the data to the blob, so you can use this particular uh, private DNS zone as well. Okay, so we'll click on OK, and next click on advance. So we'll not touch any setting over here, review and create. So once it validates and we'll click on create, it will take some time to deploy that particular storage account. And in order to save the time, we'll go back to that particular option which we have, which we need to study, firewall and virtual networks in one of the another storage account. So we'll wait till this deployment is going on. So the deployment is in progress. I'll come back, we'll go to the storage account, and now we'll use the another storage account which is already created. So we'll get another storage account as SA test 489, for which we'll study the private endpoint option. Now, if I'll come, let's say, in order to have the this network security settings, so first of all, we need to make sure that, okay, there's your storage account we are using. The purpose should be very clear because it should be used by your application within your enterprise environment to access the storage account, right? So there are a number of options we have. So the first, as a security best practice, we should make sure that okay, all networks are not allowed, because if you have selected this option, it has access from the internet as well. So let's select, the first option is provide the selected network access, and then you need to provide the, in case there are virtual networks for which you need to provide the access, you can choose that. And in case you need to provide access to certain IPs from the internet, there is an option you can provide your client IP address who will be accessing to this storage account. All these options are there and you can provide that. You can provide the IP address range, CIDR range over here. Apart from that, these are the exceptions which you need to provide. Like, you want that okay, other services which are there in case of Azure services, they are having access to your storage account. So in that case, you must access this particular option, allow trusted Microsoft services to access your storage account. And this is about the allow read access to storage logging from any network or storage metric from any network. So these are the firewall settings which allow basically access to storage services, right, from different IPs or from CIDRs, from virtual networks. So all these options you can apply it via using the firewall and virtual network option. Now we need to study the other option is private endpoint connection. So if you click on private endpoint connection, we don't have anything here. But remember, we created another storage account, SA test 489. So once it is created or deployment is completed, you'll see here we'll get an option of private endpoint connection. So you'll get that all the details from here. So let's see if it has been deployed or not. So the deployment is still in progress. It might take another 2-3 minutes to get that deployed. So for the time being, I'm going to pause the video. So once it is created, I'll come back. Now resource has been created. So this is the storage account we have created. Let me come back, and if I'll go to storage account, you can see that we have created another storage account, SA test 489, where we enable the endpoint. So if you'll see in this particular storage account, there is nothing appearing over here because we have not created any private endpoint. But if I'll go back and click to this storage account and we'll go to that particular configuration of private endpoint, so you can see this private endpoint has been created. So if you'll click on that, you'll see that okay, the private IP address has been assigned onto that. So you can see this is the FQDN setting and a private IP address has been assigned to that. So you can use this particular FQDN and create one VM, and then you can try transferring the data, and in that case do the NS lookup. You'll be able to see that okay, DNS is resolved privately and the data is sent over the you can say over the private network. See, in the previous lecture, if you remember, we have already discussed that whenever you create a storage account, this private endpoint for your storage account, it basically assigns a private IP address from your VNet. If you remember, we have assigned that okay, in which VNet it should be creating a private endpoint, and that particular IP address is assigned to your storage account, which basically will help to secure all the transfer between your VNet and storage account over a private link. So that is the beauty of that. And now the other configurations which we can do, I can show it quickly to you, is that let's say you can go to the storage explorer, let's say, and we have these blob file queue which we can select. Here you can create a new blob container, let's say as a test blob I'll create, okay, and will provide no anonymous access, only private access would be required. So it basically will create a blob, will not be able to access it because we have not provided any kind of authorization. So okay, so but here you can also create the your shared access signatures and all those things we'll discuss in other lectures as well. So all these permissions you can provide it over here, read, write, delete, and you can provide the start time and the access policy. All those things we have not created any. So that okay, the expiration time and all those we can provide it from here as well. So this is the URI and all those things we can create it from here as well. So what basically I would recommend is that okay, create a private endpoint and then provision a VM within the same virtual network. Try to access this storage account, try to do NS lookup. You'll see that okay, the data is being transferred over a private link. So this is it, friends. In this lecture, we discussed about the firewall and virtual network settings, how we can block access from the public network, and how we can provide access to virtual network Microsoft services. Then we discussed about the creating a private endpoint so that the data is transferred over a private link. So this is it, friends, in this lecture. Thank you for watching this lecture.